Hello. Welcome to Tuesday, December 12th. Um, mm, Not much going on this morning. I did some stitching. Like, I got up, I made coffee, put the kid on the bus, and I worked a little bit on my threads of diaspora. So it's coming along. I still don't enjoy the process, but it's coming along. What am I doing today? I'm going to finish holiday cards and I'm going to do some designing or work on some designing. Trying to get some knitting out there. It's still going to be a while. I had a really good idea for a pattern, but it's very, I want to say it's complicated, but I don't want to scare any potential knitters. It's not that the knitting is complicated. It's sorry, I got distracted. My partner messaged me and it showed up on the screen. So the knitting itself is not going to be complicated. What I'm doing with the chart and the work that I have to do is what's complicated. So that's not going to be a release anytime soon. I'm considering maybe designing another hat just because it occurs to me that I need a new hat. So maybe I'll design a unisex hat. And I have some shawl ideas, but they're slow. Getting them to come to fruition is slow. So that's what's going on the knitwear design front. Cross stitch wise, where is wind stitch? There it is. Cross stitch wise, I don't have anything planned for the foreseeable. I am working on a free design for Valentine's Day. So we'll see. I don't know. And yeah, that's what I got. It's still early. So let's see what I managed to accomplish today, shall we? Hi, it is now, what time is it? 1:30 in the afternoon. I was looking at knitting stitch guides, I guess they're called, not stitch guides, just stitch dictionaries, I think is, pardon me, the best way to describe where knitters and designers get their ideas from. I knit a swatch because I have to have a hat, and so I figure out why don't I design a hat? And I found something that I liked. I've got kind of an idea. It's not fully formed yet, but it's solid enough that what I did for the past hour and a half or so is knit a swatch. I knit a swatch. I dug around in my stash for some wool that would make a good hat, and I found some. This is Harrisville yarn from their Watershed collection. It's a nice worsted weight yarn. It's a very good workhorse yarn. It's no fuss, no muss, just some 2-ply worsted weight wool. And the most important thing in knitting is gauge. And no one likes to hear that. Because it's a pain in the ass, right? You have to knit these little squares or not so little squares. Honestly, sometimes whole big old rectangles. I mean, I personally feel, in my experience, you want your swatch to at least be 4 inches long, at least. I'm probably cutting it close a little bit here. And a couple of things. Sorry, lost my train of thought. Okay, so the first thing you need to think about when you're going to knit a swatch is you have to knit that swatch using the same needles that you're going to be knitting the project in. Now listen to what I said again. You have to use the same needles that you're going to be knitting the project in. Not the same size, the same needles. I'm going to knit this hat using this set of needles. So I knit my swatch using this set of needles. Because how I knit with these needles is one way. If for some reason some very kind benefactor were to buy me some fancy schmancy signature needles, I will probably knit very differently the first couple or 3 times that I knit with those needles, because they're new and they're expensive. And psychologically, that's going to affect the way I knit, whether I notice it or not. Another thing is that if you're knitting, if the garment or the item that you are going to be knitting is knit in the round, then my friend, you need to swatch in the round. And it's going to look like that. And I hear Josh. Oh, maybe he knows I'm vlogging. Anyway, if you're knitting, if the finished object is something that is knit in the round, you need to swatch in the round. Because otherwise it's not accurate, right? Yes.
Oh, you're recording.
Yes.
I'll come back later.
Just a few minutes. It's different. Because when you're knitting in the round, you're knitting just around and around and around and around. You're knitting flat, you're knitting, you're turning, and then you're purling. And then you're turning and you're knitting. And then you're turning and you're purling. It's different. Your hands are doing different things. The yarn is doing something different. And the last thing is when you've knit your swatch, you have to then wash your swatch. I promise you have to wash your swatch. It's not going to be accurate unless you wash the swatch. It's going to give your yarn time to relax and bloom and be the fabric that it really wants to be. And there is nothing worse than knitting a swatch, getting gauge, and then knitting a whole sweater or a shawl or a hat. Well, with a shawl, it's not always a big deal, but knitting a hat or a sweater or a pair of socks and then blocking those, which involves a light wash, and realizing that you have knit something that is not going to be able to be worn by anyone outside of Andre the Giant, and he's been dead for like 20 years. So if you want to knit, you have to swatch, and you have to swatch correctly. Okay, so I'm going to go wash this, and maybe I will do some cross-stitching or some reading. I am going to work on the gamer today. I just don't know when. So I'll see you later. Okay, I lied. I did not actually get any stitching on the gamer done, but in my defense, it's just been a day. I've been preoccupied with other things, like this book. Do you remember last week when I said it was just all right? It got good. I mean, it's not a 5-star read, but then again, I very rarely give books 5 stars. But this is... It adheres to the original Dracula myth. It is properly creepy. Yeah, it is. It's creepy. It would probably scare you. And it's just a good story. So I'm more than halfway through, and I'm going to finish it in a couple days. So that's what I'm doing. And my swatch from earlier today had its bath. It is drying, and I guess we'll talk about it some more tomorrow, since apparently I'm doing knitting lectures now. No, not really. One time does not make a habit, but if I don't have any other content, I can talk about knitting some more. Yeah. Okay, this cat wants attention, so I will say good night.